Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And it's number 117, and I think we've got the number right at last. See if we can hang on to it. Number 117 in Sounding the Shallows. And here we
I
are
can't
again.
think of anything significant about that number whatsoever, Adrian.
Well, the significance of it is that it is the one that we're using today.
Oh, okay.
So there we are. It's like people always ask me about the picture on the wall up in our house, because we're in the shed at the bottom of the garden at the moment. But on the wall there's a picture of a car, an old car. And people ask, why have you got a picture of an old car, broken up old car? And the answer, in the end, is the fact that it's been painted. It was broken down, it had been lost, and now it's become special. So today, number 117 has its own special place. So there we are.
All right. Well, after that, I have no idea what to say, really, except that there is a special significance, isn't there, this week? And that is you are venturing out for the first time for a very long time in a different way, aren't you?
Yeah, because for a long time my walking has got worse and worse. And I've been wearing knee braces, you'll be fascinated to hear, which actually are remarkably helpful.
Oh, they're good, aren't they?
But I now have a powered chair, and I'm not quite sure what you call it, but it's an electric chair.
You call it a power chair?
No, it has its own. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, it's a electric motor, and it allows you to travel up to 4 miles an hour, which is a fast walking speed. But the most important thing is that it means that I can now pop up to the shop.
Yes.
For some time, it's either been that we've had to drive up, or I might every now and then stagger up on 2 sticks or something. But this thing needs a bit of care because of curbs and things. But it does whiz around, so it's been a very.
Its effectiveness does somewhat depend on the person driving it, doesn't it, Adrian? I mean, you did pop up to the shops today, to the post office. In fact,
it really wasn't. Oh, well, I made a complete mess of it. I went up to do 2 things. I failed to do one, because the shop that was supposed to have the things I was going to get didn't have them, and the other one was I forgot to take something I needed to take.
Yeah,
but the good thing was that I then gave up and went to the cafe and had what they call a torpedo bacon sandwich, which was wonderful.
Yeah. And you haven't been able to do that on your own for a long time.
A coffee on its own, and then a replacement coffee.
Yeah.
No, it's different. It's not. If you like, it's not salvation of travel or fitness. The odd thing about it is that you get on the chair and you say, right, I'm going to go and do this now. And then you sit in a chair.
I know.
And I don't think I'd ever really focused on that before. So although there's a wonderful liberation about being able to whiz around, there's also a realization that it's another step.
I know.
But
having
thank God for what I've got.
Yeah, and I mean,
wonderful.
you had to go to the hospital, didn't you, for some X-rays, and that was the most liberating thing,
the great
because
thing about
hospitals make you
is
feel
they have smooth floors, and they have very wide corridors, and it was a bit like that bit in The Shining where the child goes up the corridor in his car. I mean, I was just whizzing up this thing, and I could see people popping out of side doors. Fortunately, they're very wide corridors. This chair is amazingly manoeuvrable, so I missed most people as I went up.
Only you could relate it to a child in The Shining.
Oh well, sorry about that.
I mean, my reality is slightly different. I mean, I'm very relieved about this for you, Adrian, but the only problem is that our dog Gracie is used to keeping up with you, and so now as you go at 4 miles an hour, so does she. So she's like a husky pulling me along. I feel as though I'm sort of on a sledge being dragged along at speed so she can keep up with you. So I end up quite puffed out, really, by this whole experience. But no,
she's very
good.
sweet though. But every now and then she'll come up to the front of the chair and almost ask to be able to jump up and just ride for a while.
Yes.
So she hasn't quite understood what it all means. But yeah,
and
it's
one of the really nice things, I think, is that, I mean, you're able to meet people in a different way on your own without being pushed there or being in so much pain that you actually are longing for I don't know, I wouldn't
Well,
say
I am
longing
a-
for the conversation to stop, but you're not able to stop and relax to talk to people
No.
because you're in so much pain.
I am a serial chatterer with
I
people.
know.
Chatterer with people. And there was an instance this week when I was waiting for you at the hospital where I'd have my knees x-rayed. Promise you no more about my knees. And this couple came up and the man said, do you want to use the rest of my parking ticket? And I, of course, said, no, the Lord Jesus Christ is the person I
Adrian,
follow.
carry on.
And I will not allow a parking ticket to be used beyond. No, of course I didn't.
Well, we didn't need it anyway.
No, we didn't anyway. But anyway, no. I said to him, the world seems to be full of Scottish people.
Because he was Scottish.
Yeah, and because he had a broad Scottish accent. And he looked a bit surprised and said, really? And I said, well, I tell you what it is on my mind. It's because I've been watching that series called Shetland. And immediately his face became animated and he said, is she alive? That's what I want to know. Is Tosh alive? Or actually he said, is Tosh alive? Is Tosh alive? Like that, in a German accent. But no, and of course, this series is a detective series set on the island of one of the Shetland Isles and of Scotland, and it's a detective series. And the end of the previous episode had been this really, really nice lady detective apparently being blown up in a caravan, a small caravan, and anyone who was watching Shetland would have been waiting with bated breath to know whether Tosh survived the explosion.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be a lot more like that when there was only 2 channels or 3 channels, didn't it? Where a lot of people would be watching the same program and they would kind of be joined in connection with the unreality of that drama, if you like.
Yeah.
Do you remember? I mean, it was years and forever ago, Adrian, but it was Coronation Street and Deirdre was put in prison. And there was a campaign to free Deirdre. And there were people walking around with placards. And I know it was silly.
There was a question asked in Parliament.
There was a question asked him.
Yeah.
And I know that nobody really believed she was in... Well, I suspect they didn't really believe she was in prison. But that connection with drama is something that is both useful and not, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I mean, it can move you. It can unite you, and worrying about somebody who isn't real. It can... I mean, I was thinking about children, and it's designed, isn't it? All these stories, mainly about animals, but for them to explore feelings of sadness or loneliness or fear.
Yeah.
So fiction can do all sorts of things.
Well, what that does is allow them to safely know how it feels to feel sad or to feel very happy.
Yeah.
And it's all in the context of people they know and books and pictures. So I think it's really helpful as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And possible to be actually really moved by a cartoon, isn't it?
Yes, I was very unpleasant to you once, wasn't I?
What
we were in the cinema.
Once? No, I mean, what are you thinking
We
about?
were in the cinema watching Lady and the Tramp.
Yes, and I hadn't known you very long, had I,
There comes a
Adrian?
moment where apparently one of the dogs is killed by a carriage or something.
Yes.
And
Little Scotty
you
dog.
said to me in a quivering voice, "Does he die?" And I said, yes, he does.
Yes.
But he doesn't, actually.
No.
So that wasn't very nice, was it?
No, it really
No.
wasn't. I'm amazed that we continue to be together after such a terrible thing that you did.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. But it is true, though, isn't it, that there are values in being moved by something that isn't real. But I've been thinking a lot recently about the dangers of that very same thing. And we're seeing it with a lot of young people who are watching a huge amount of online stuff, aren't we?
I think what we saw last night on the television, or not last night, a couple of nights ago, was one of the most hideous things I've seen. Films of young people seriously and savagely beating up younger people, and then somebody clearly is filming that, and the films are kind of going out all over the place. It was just horrible.
I think what frightened me about it is that when you then watch something that's on television, on your screen, it's separated from reality. So we talked about the positiveness of that. You said about children being able to explore their feelings safely through cartoons. But this was the opposite to that, wasn't it? Of people exploring some really worrying aspects of what they were feeling, quite comfortable, because they were separated from it. That I found that very disturbing. And I think at the moment, there's so much talk about mental health, especially in young people.
Yeah, and a lot of talk about people taking their own lives, which, because I suppose suicide has become one of the options for young people. It's no longer is a terrible, dark thing, but when I was a child, if someone took their own life, it was a massive departure from the norm.
Yeah.
And I think the really worrying thing is that although it still shocks and horrifies, it's become more part of the lives we lead.
Yeah.
As an option.
Yeah.
And
I think we may have mentioned before about the 3 dads walking, because all 3 of them had children that had taken their own lives, and how they are hoping to have it as part of education in schools. Telling these kids, you may feel it so strongly, and you may be encouraged by reading about it online or by watching things, but tomorrow you won't wake up, you won't have your breakfast, you won't meet up with your mates.
I'm not sure what the tone is for telling young people that, but certainly there needs to be an awareness now. I think that it's out there and they're talking about it.
Yeah.
Horrible.
I mean, there is a danger. There's always a danger, and I know again we'll have talked about this before, but there's always a danger, isn't there, in allowing things to become kind of simple and shallow and easy to do. And I was thinking really about certainly teaching when we were young about becoming a Christian. It was very easy to do it. You said the words and then you were in. And it was always easy. I mean, you were converted through the story of the thief on the cross, weren't you? It couldn't have been easier in that sense.
Yes, although, I mean, now, looking back, but I don't think I would say that I was converted by that story. I would say that I was profoundly moved by it and really affected by the idea that all Jesus said to him was, yes, I'll remember you.
I would say
the simplicity and
more than that, Adrian. I would say that God knew exactly the right thing for you personally to hear, because you were struggling with who you were. You were struggling with not feeling very special at all.
That's true.
And I think God will always find a way to speak to somebody, and for you it was that.
But it is complicated. I mean, you used the word shallow. That where the expression of faith, I can only talk about Christian faith really, is not truthful. It can become a very shallow picture indeed in terms of music and explanation and conversation about all sorts of things like sin, sin and change in personality, all sorts of areas that are not given, they're not allowed the granular nature of their occurrence in people. That is not how things happen.
No.
And it's very rarely that, in my experience anyway, that God takes a divine finger and touches somebody and totally changes them. Because I don't think he wants to change someone into somebody else. What he wants is that same person to become the person they could always have been and can become, or can partly become. And that requires a lot of looking after and talking and thinking carefully about what's happening in people's lives.
It really does, and not having a false, silly dramatic expectation as to what their life can be as soon as they start. I mean, in any journey, if you think about any journey, you start off, your feet get very sore very quickly because you're not toughened up.
Yeah.
And that is not, I mean, Jesus really did not say that, did he? He didn't say...
He certainly didn't say, just before you get on to the next bit, that prayer is like a telephone. Do you remember that song?
You hated that song. It was
We
one
used
of
to
the
sing.
songs I enjoyed singing with children, and probably other people who might be listening to this will know that song. Prayer is like a telephone.
Yeah, there's
it's so
nothing
that you
wrong
can talk
with
to
singing
Jesus.
a nice song.
No.
But prayer, can I just say, publicly and finally, that prayer is not like a telephone. I hope it isn't too much like a telephone, actually, because mine bewilders me. But I
Sometimes
think
you
it's-
get put on hold indefinitely
Well,
when
that's
you
right,
try and
yeah.
get through to people.
But you're so easy to do the thing that will make a tiny, tiny difference now, and actually be using something that is unreal and unhelpful.
And therefore very unhelpful later on,
There
yeah.
was another song, wasn't there? Gone, 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 gone. All my sins are gone.
Well, that was one that you
Well,
taught me. Young Christians sang it, you know.
Well,
awful.
good luck with that is all I can say.
I know.
Yes. Anyway, yeah, and Jesus. It's funny how some things Jesus said don't get much publicity. I mean,
What were you thinking?
Well, he said, "Don't count. You must count the cost." You know, we always.
Yes, he did say
People
that.
always used to say, oh, just come to Jesus. Well, I mean, I'll read it to you. Hold on. It's in Luke, book of Luke. I'll read a bit of it anyway. Large crowds were travelling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and doesn't hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple."
Right, well, we'll come back to
We'll
that.
come back
maybe.
to that. "Whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." And then he says, "Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you've got enough money to complete it? Because if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying this person began to build and wasn't able to finish." Or suppose a king's about to go to war. He has to sort out whether he can actually perform what he wants to do in the course of that war. And so he has to count the cost. And he says, in the same way, those of you who don't give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. Now, the thing we need to say about that, because I'm sure some people will react precisely as I have done in the past to the things that he says there. Do you actually have to hate your family and your friends and those you love? Well, we have to introduce now that wonderful word, hyperbole, or hyperbole, as Monty Python called it, which is the using exaggeration for effect. And what Jesus was doing, and what he so often does, is to say, the way you need me, the way you need closeness to me, the relationship you need with me is going to make the relationship you have with your family look as if you hate them. And
really?
he doesn't mean don't love them or hate them. He means there is a journey to make from ordinary love, which is fine and good, and he in other places says that's, meets a mother and a son, and the son's died, and he brings the son back to life and sees the love there, and it's all a wonderful thing. But he's making a very strong and very vivid point about the cost if you want to be a disciple, and he means following, joining in with the work, being behind the counter, actually being involved in doing stuff.
Yes, I mean, I still struggle with that, but there's no doubt that he says, large crowds were travelling with Jesus. So they were all having a lovely time, but there was no cost whatsoever. They were just turning up and enjoying being part of
and
it.
And loads of them left, didn't they?
When it got tough, that's just what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And Jesus knew that it was going to get very tough, and that unless they'd already started kind of, maybe turning their backs, no, not turning their backs, but maybe being prepared to look forward, to follow him, they were never going to get to the end. I still find it tough. I still do. I would love to find an interpretation that was easier than that, but
I don't. Yeah, I guess so.
But the other parts of it, and again, I suppose I still find it tough, really, because we're talking about a journey, so we do need to afford the foundations, but surely it becomes more possible to build your house as you go along, because you are gradually, if you like, gaining currency.
Yeah, there's no problem about gradually learning how to do these things and how to get closer to where you need to be. But people talk a lot at the moment about the cost of living, rightly so.
Well,
it's looking horrendous. But I don't think we quite take this Christian thing seriously enough. The cost of life, that's what it's actually about. And don't ask me to explain it, because I can't. The cost of being able to live forever, if you like, that is what it's all about. If you believe that, if you believe what Jesus preached, and it's not just a matter of taking on things like you said just now. You say something in a shallow way and it doesn't really register. Okay, we must love our neighbour. We have to, and everyone is aware that people who are damaged and have had trouble in their lives and influenced by all sorts of things, it's quite a journey to get from there to loving your neighbour and to loving God. And God isn't an idiot. I'm sure he'd be thrilled to hear me say that. He may be omnipotent, but he's not an idiot. So for each of us there's a different journey. But I think Jesus was trying to crash into the argument and say, look, you really, really need to take this seriously.
Yeah. It may be that following other rabbis didn't actually involve the same sort of cost.
No, that's absolutely right, yeah. And it's a very difficult area, and there's a lot more to be said about it, and I'd love to hear what people think about it. I mean, there are probably other interpretations of that.
The chair isn't a bad image, because you have a new freedom, you have a new life that you haven't had for a very long time. But with it is an understanding of loss, of...
There is an understanding of loss, and there's also a long period of training yourself to watch the terrain very carefully to make sure you don't come to grief, which you can.
Yeah.
So
but it means you can go forward, which is brilliant.
Yeah, you can go forward, actually, and left, and right, and backwards, because my chair can turn on a coin, which many of you have never heard of.
I think it's a good thing we're running out of time, Adrian.
Which is a sixpence. Which is a little tiny silver coin. Yeah, yes, I think we'd better go. We'll see you next week.
We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.